Welcome to this week's Vegan Family Podcast.
Yes, we're coming to you again from our basements and our garages, and in my case, my panic room, which is a special area of my basement I made to get away from the kids, because we are all in the midst of homeschooling, coronavirus lockdown, quarantine, stay at home initiative because of the virus. And how is it going on your end, Cheryl? How are things in LA?
Well, I wish that garages and basements was kind of a joke, but it's not. I'm
I know.
literally sitting here in my garage, listening for little feet.
Oh,
We're
oh,
doing fine. I think, it's not all that different from when we talked last time. There's a lot of like it's like there's all these memes out there about like nature is taking back the earth,
right, right.
like my children taking over the house. Like there's just toys everywhere and
That's
remnants of whatever projects they've been working on.
That is
And
hilarious. I never thought of that. They show you how nature is taking over and that elephants are walking the streets of India and other wildlife is taking our kids have literally taken over our homes.
yeah. I think of them as like those nature documentaries. It'll be like, oh, you know, the chimpanzee can no longer live, in a home. Like they're growing up and becoming mature, and this is a time when in the wild they'd be, So yeah, I've got my own little primate colony over here.
Oh my God. Well, I've got
Just toys everywhere. I can't tell you how many like tableaus of various toy scenarios are like on my nightstand and like in the bathroom. There's just like a whole like rock planet with various combinations of Star Wars and
Yep.
superhero characters and
I've got a
just
good one.
it's
I,
ridiculous.
we've got a special guest this week, which I'm excited about. So thank you for tuning in to this episode of Vegan Family Podcast. I have a good one for you, Cheryl, that I mentioned to friends the other day is that when these kids do finally return to school, they're going to wonder why they're not getting fed snacks all day long. And they're
Oh,
going to say
totally.
to their teacher, "Where's YouTube?"
Well, their teachers have been relying on a lot of those kinds of electronic,
I know it's true. All right.
getting
So
to it.
So yes, we have a special guest this week. Hopefully, we'll maybe do a giveaway. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
It's time for Animal Outlook's Vegan Family Podcast with your hosts Eric C. Lindstrom and Cheryl Leahy.
And we're back.
So yeah, these are challenging times for all parents, aren't they? I mean, let alone being vegan, just being at home constantly now for 36 or 37 days. I don't know what day you're on, but we didn't expect any of us, I think, for it to last this long. It's very important, obviously, but here we are, the vegan parents at home with our kids, homeschooling suddenly, and facing all the challenges of doing all that.
Well, I'll say it's also challenging for the kids. I mean, there's good too. There's a lot of stuff that's kind of fun and entertaining. But yesterday, my 4-year-old, I was like kind of shooing him away because I'm like, I have a meeting. And he just kind of stopped in his tracks and was like, is a meeting just like an important phone call?
Yep. I had a meeting yesterday, of course, an Animal Outlook meeting. We're talking about Veg Week, which as we record this, we're just over halfway through Veg Week, our annual celebration of trying a vegan diet for a week during Earth Day week. And so
Sure.
all of us in the household, and there's 4 of us, there's myself and my wife, Jen, who is the Director of Diversity and Inclusion at Cornell University, our first grader, who's 7, and our kindergartner, who's 5. All 4 of us had a meeting at 2 o'clock. So there were 4 devices all in one room, and each person with their headphones having separate conversations with whomever's facilitating their meeting. It's quite a different dynamic.
At least you were on headphones. And
Yes,
when you said that, I was just, picturing everybody,
yelling at the same time.
corner to try to get a moment of peace. And
Oh my gosh. So
they
yes,
have boxes. Like we have like old like big boxes, and they've both decorated their boxes with like pictures of themselves and like little like one of them has like like crayons and a first aid kit and like a book, and they just go into their box when they're like irritated with everybody.
So we have a special guest. I'll let you do the introduction. You maybe know a little bit more about Meredith Jones than I do, but I'm excited to hear some more input from another vegan mom.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have Meredith on. Thank you so much for joining us. So Meredith is a filmmaker and has some expertise in, really packaging stories and getting them out into the world, and has recently kind of put those talents to use in veganizing her family and herself. And we thought it would be great to have a conversation about that.
Welcome, Meredith.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here today.
That's great. So
tell us a little bit, Meredith, tell us a little bit about kind of your journey, which sounds like it sort of started with vegetarianism and then recently shifted into veganism, not just for you, but for your family.
Yeah. So I became a vegetarian a really long time ago. Here in North Carolina, that's where we live, we are really just at like ground zero with the concentrated animal feeding operations and all of the farms, and it's really, very rural, a lot of North Carolina. And when my youngest daughter, who's now 13, she said she wanted to go to a farm, and she was like maybe 16 months old. And I thought, oh, that would be so cute to take her and a little friend to the farm. And I was thinking like petting chickens and goats, but we, accidentally took ourselves to a factory farm.
Oh my gosh.
Because it was like a friend of a friend was like, oh, I know somebody with a farm. Sure, Oh, it was just so upsetting. I mean, as you can imagine. And so that was the day that I became a vegetarian. But the journey sort of evolved from there, and, I ended up having another child, and I wasn't really, I was a vegetarian. I wasn't really making my children, forcing them to make that choice with me when they weren't in the home. But as the years grew on and I came and sort of played around with being a vegan, I actually came and stumbled across Compassion Over Killing before it was Animal Outlook. And I was really inspired with a lot of the things that I saw on your website and the work that y'all were doing. And I signed up for the newsletter, and I took myself into this journey of really looking into the films that made a difference. So it was kind of like, I kind of went to like a research hole with it. Mm-hmm. And one of the first ones that I saw that just really moved me was Earthlings. And the whole idea of like speciesism, and it just touched me in this huge way. And I was like, it's time, like being a vegetarian is not enough. I want to take it up a notch. And then I ended up sharing the films with some of my family members. And then before you know it, it's really spread. So it, I think it's really hard to convince people to do something with just your words or just being like, trying to like push your point on someone. And that's what I love about the visual storytelling of film, because I think it's so impactful and it sticks with people in such a greater way than just, one person trying to make a point.
Yeah. And for those listening who have never heard of or seen Earthlings, I don't know if you want to kind of talk about what that looks like. I'll just say that, we as an organization very much see the power of, undercover footage, right? This is what we really put a lot of, blood, sweat, and tears into, quite literally. And I think that's where, a talented filmmaker, storyteller can really kind of bring those raw visuals out into the world and get people to have that kind of light bulb moment of, what's the, what does this mean? Like, what is really going on, and how does this sort of impact my values? But I think those really sort of hard to watch visuals can be incredibly powerful.
Definitely. And I have found this other really interesting facet. I don't know if it's because I'm like trying to incorporate my marketing and sales skills with what I know about film. But so depending on who the person is and depending on what they value, that's really how I recommend the film. So like my dad is 77, and my mom's in her late 60s, and my dad is really, really concerned about health. So, and it's funny because he's been a meat eating carnivore really his entire life. I mean, fried chicken was like a staple in my home growing up. And, I started to think about him, and I was like, Dad, like, you should really watch, a couple of these docs, What the Health, that was a big one, or Game Changers. And he said, okay, all right. I mean, I'm never going to be, a vegetarian. I mean, he's made fun of me for literally years. At every like major holiday, they always try to pass me like the ham or the, it's like a big joke. Well, sure enough, I mean, he and my mom watched those movies, and for the first time in 77 years, he is now a full-on vegan. Wow. He lost all this weight. He has all this energy. I mean, it's really amazing to watch how these films have transformed people's lives.
Yeah, actually, you mentioned film, Meredith, and I would be remiss in not talking about Plant Pure Nation for a couple of reasons. It came from Nelson Campbell, who's one of the sons of T. Colin Campbell, who, of course, is a pioneer in the whole food plant-based movement. And Plant Pure Nation was one of those movies that came out, I think, just before What the Health. And it followed, T. Colin Campbell's exploration of a plant-based diet, as well as a bunch of people in North Carolina. So Plant Pure Nation's headquarters were in Mebane. I don't know how close you are to Mebane, but it's a tiny little town in North Carolina where they did a control group of 20 or so meat eaters, traditional Southern food consumers, and put them on a plant-based diet for some 20 or 21 days, and then tracked their health during that time. And so this is actually how I became vegan ultimately. I entered it from the dietary side first. And to hear you talk about sort of jumping in the deep end or going from vegetarian to vegan because of animal rights, I think is fantastic. I think that's definitely at the point I'm in right now with my journey, sort of more eye-opening investigations, as well as sharing what the truth of what's happening in factory farms and in big agriculture. But for me, it was all about losing weight, feeling great, getting a certain age and wanting to feel healthier. And then suddenly making this, I call the connection, making the connection and saying, wait a second, it just so happens this diet that I'm on that makes me feel great also is saving animals. And now, of course, I consider myself an ethical vegan where I'm making my choices, decisions, as well as sort of my platform all about saving animals and then feeling the benefits of a good diet.
Right. Yeah, as I'm listening to both of you, I'm really thinking about how the thread here that I think is really important for all of us who, whether we're sort of, the kinds of advocates who work at animal protection organizations, or we're just, trying to kind of talk to other human beings and values, essentially. I think one really important principle that I sort of started kind of understanding when we looked at some of the social science research on attitude and behavior change is you have to really be thinking about talking to that person like for who they are. You have to be sort of connected and sensitive and not just throw a bunch of information out into the world and expect it to be received in the same way across the board by everyone, right? I mean, this sort of snap your fingers, like how come everybody, you can't have like a foot tapping attitude that's just kind of like, well, how come you don't see it the way I see it? So I think, being able to have that sort of personal connection or understand how certain people are kind of challenged or, for example, like having a health challenge or where their values are, and then this sort of the intersection point, how they might be receptive to some of these ideas. But I will say, Meredith, don't sell yourself short. Like there's tons of people who've watched these films and they still, or given their family these films and they still can't convince their family to change their behavior and, go vegan or close to vegan or even reduce, their animal product consumption. So, what was the magic there? Like, how did that happen?
Well, okay, so this is funny, and this goes sort of into my Southern roots culture too. So, I grew up in a real Christian family, and religion plays a huge role, I think, in a lot of the parts of the South, especially in the Carolinas. And I did actually make the connection between how, Christians are always trying to like be really evangelical with other people, especially like the non-believers. And it's interesting how, you know, there's so much about like, look, there's all this like unconditional love out there for you from God and Jesus, but if you don't believe, you're going to hell. And I think that people try to, you know, I saw a lot of recruitment to the church growing up, and I was like, gosh, you know, all of that is so harsh. Like, it would be such a better message to just be like, you know, there's some unconditional love out there, and if you want to have a conversation about it, let's do it. And so I was like, you know, in a lot of ways, having an ethical, you know, ideology about anything, whether it's our food or how we take care of our children, or, you know, what do we believe spiritually, you know, I think that coming at people with a like, hey, I see you, you're a human, I don't stand in judgment of you, but this is something interesting I've discovered if you want to take a look at it. I have found that the approach is everything.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's the same concept, right? I mean, it's the idea of, like you say, sort of being sensitive and approaching people as a human and who they are and what it is that kind of matters to them or what they value and understand, and be able to kind of find that common ground. I think that's
right. But like my business partner, you know, I mean, she's an amazing woman, and she's been, you know, in and out of practicing being a vegetarian and other things, but her reason and her point of entry was really different even than the health side or the ethical side, as she was really trying to like raise her spiritual vibration, and she, you know, was interested in how does what we put into our bodies limit us, and sort of that Rudolf Steiner idea that we stay kind of really grounded to the earth when we're eating a lot of animal products. And so she went that direction, and it just continues to amaze me how everyone can take this idea, even here in the South, where we're all, you know, surrounded by these farms and a lot of people doing the same way of life, and make it their own. Like, we're all here in it saying, how is this going to be ours?
Yeah, I think that whole kind of being attuned to people, you know, is really the key here. And then, you know, we talked a little bit about the sort of film side of things. Like, how do you think, like, okay, how does this translate into if you're making a piece of art, of film, or, you know, a piece of writing or something that kind of, you know, you don't have that face-to-face interaction necessarily with another individual person. What are the things that make really good visual storytelling, or the components of a good story to sort of get this, you know, this message out there and connect with people?
Right. Well, I think, you know, really strong visual image, you know, even if it is graphic and it's really hard to watch, you know, like Earthlings, for example, I think what they did that was so powerful was they combined really strong images, but then they made the suggestion to the viewer that it really wasn't any different than, you know, genocide or racism or misogyny. And so when you're able to suggest a really bold idea with a strong visual, I think it allows people to feel some sort of emotional response. I mean, I think the best storytelling is always, how can you elicit an emotional response, whether it is humor or, you know, fear or outrage or emotional sadness. I mean, anytime that there is an emotion you can trigger, that's when you know you're going to have an effect. I mean, yeah, unfortunately, a lot of advertisers know that as well, which is why political ads are so horrifying, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
They know exactly what to say to elicit one of these emotions. But I think that with films, it is about connecting to those. And, you know, if you want to get, that's why I said that knowing the person is an added asset to which film you would recommend, because then you're able to tailor the message to the person that you know is going to receive it, which is, you know, sort of like advertising marketing 101.
Yeah, it surprises me, like, after all this time watching investigations footage and talking with our undercover investigators, that it'll still get me. Like, it'll still, like, you know, bring some kind of, you know,
response. Yeah.
Sadness, and like there's a certain amount of like perspective about the world that kind of comes from you know, engaging in this stuff. Like, I remember I don't think I've talked about this in the podcast before, but I remember did an investigation of a spent dairy cow facility a number of years ago in Northern California that was supplying, like, the dairy industry. A lot of the slaughtered cows, the mom cows, that meat ends up at, like, fast food restaurants, school lunch program, that kind of thing. And so I remember sitting and watching, like, we were really trying to hurry to get everything ready to kind of bring to the authorities and stuff. And, I was in very close daily contact with the investigator and kind of I remember spending like, 18 hours one day just sitting and going through footage and organizing it and whatever. And then going outside the next day, like watching literally like just, watching this slaughter footage and going outside the next day and seeing people play kickball in the park. And I live in Southern California. It's like really sunny and nice all the time. And so this like this really cute, like idyllic scene of people like just out there playing kickball. And then I'm like, well, it's so interesting. Like some people like spend their day playing kickball in the park, and some people spend their day, brains out of the house. Like it's so like this bizarre. Like why do we do this to them? Like it was that moment of like, it's almost like surreal. Like if it like if there was some alien species that came in and looked at what we're doing, like this would just be so absurd and awful. And it's only that. It's only the visuals of what's happening that can elicit that kind of sort of high intensity emotion, like still to this day for me.
Yeah, right off of that, Cheryl, too, a lot of people probably don't remember, recognize, understand that when Animal Outlook's undercover investigators capture all of this footage, we, our director of investigations, as well as yourself, all the way to the marketing department, have to watch hours of this footage to, sort of pull out the most compelling or the stuff that's going to actually make an impact on people. And so we need to actually watch all of it. And it's absolutely unbelievably heartbreaking to have to do this as part of your job. I have to look away oftentimes as we're looking at sort of rough cuts of videos of undercover investigations. And I'm not the person who was there capturing it. And I'm not the person who was first looking at it to cut it down to, it's half an hour cut before it becomes a 6-minute cut or whatever. So, Meredith, have you actually, since going vegan and since watching Earthlings, have you been inspired yourself to do any filmmaking, to write anything, storytelling related to slaughterhouses or animal agriculture?
It's interesting you would say that because I did float something by my business partner, and we had a conversation about it. We have not filmed anything yet, and I was really fascinated when I saw the work that y'all are doing going undercover, because all I can think about from a production standpoint is how are y'all getting in there? Like how are you getting in there with the cameras and really capturing that, but it is something that I think I would like to do at some point, and I think I'm definitely in the right place for it.
Well, I'll tell you the thing that really I think is sort of a well of sort of insight and stories are the investigators themselves, like their experiences doing that. We watch it from sort of this distant perch. And the perspectives that these people have going in there, it's just, unbelievable. Like that's something that, I can listen to them talk and just, never gets old. So I think
that's something that would interest me because, one of the things that we always ask ourselves as storytellers is what story hasn't already been told? What's the new angle on this? What can we present that would be interesting and captivating because it hasn't been told already?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's sort of all these hours of footage and all this time that's spent going in, and we only kind of get that one big shot to get the investigation out there, and we're trying to spend some time, really being able to dig into our library basically and kind of get that material out. Which, I think let's sort of circle this back to the family theme of this podcast. And I think, there's sort of different challenges or different experiences when somebody's coming at this, at 7 years old versus coming at this, as a single person or as, a parent or, think, these are all sort of core questions about how do you, bring these values and sort of live these values as a family. So maybe we can kind of shift gears away from the heavy and into like, how has this been for your family, Meredith? Like, how do your kids, how's this transition been for your kids? How are you kind of preserving traditions or building new traditions? Have they said anything kind of, insightful as kids so often do, or, sort of, revealing about how they're experiencing this?
Yeah, the kids are doing good. Having, as you both know, having children at home, especially during this time, is really challenging. Mine are 7 and 13, so a little different from having small children, but I feel like what they're lacking in energy, sometimes the teenagers are making up for in hormones, and so there's a lot of that moving around. My teenager is taking this time to really get very clean about her diet, so that has been interesting to watch unfold. She's sort of doing like an all like whole foods approach.
Nice.
When you combine that with vegan or vegetarian, that is really challenging. So we're really doing like lot of fresh vegetables and fruits and trying to get away from everything processed.
That's
which
great.
I still enjoy my like Beyond Beef stuff. So, and then the little one is really funny. I mean, I think, when was this? Like maybe 6 months ago when I was like, we're really doing this now. We're going all the way vegan, and we're not going to have, any meat products at all in the house. And she just cried and cried. And she's like, does this mean I never get bacon?
Oh, no. The classic.
We loved her. And I wasn't even making her bacon. I would like to go on the record of saying that. But I think she was getting that at like her grandmother's house or her dad's house. But I said, look, I can't control what you do when you're not in this home. So you go on into the world and be your own person. But in this home, we're going to put animals first. And side note, that is one of the only positive things about divorce during a pandemic is that there is another place for the kids to go to from time to time. Really takes it out.
Is that what I need to do? Seems drastic, but it might be worth it.
I mean, I wouldn't go that far unless you have to, but it's get really, really dark.
So
saying there are alternatives here.
So a couple of questions about your kids. How long have they been on vegan diets, and what are some of their sort of favorite, I would say, replacements or things that they definitely love? Because our kids have our own things that they crave or love seeing me make or create for them. Are they doing well with it? How's it going?
Well, again, oddly enough, the older one, who you would think would be more resistant, is doing better. And she's been a vegetarian for a couple of years. And so she's doing really well, and she likes some of the same things that I like. I mean, before she started really getting clean, because now she won't even touch anything processed. But she was eating like the smart bacon and making BLTs, if you will, with some of those just the substitute meats. We found those, and like we like the veggie shreds and. A lot of like the tofuti, I guess is the name, the sour cream substitute.
Oh yeah, it's delicious.
It works amazing in meals. The younger one, I mean, she's gonna be definitely staying with like more of the fruits and the vegetables. I mean, I keep trying to serve her the smart bacon, and every time she just takes one look at it and is just so upset.
That's it. Oh my gosh.
It's really funny.
Was she like more of a as like a young baby and toddler, was she like harder to try new foods and stuff?
She's always been kind of an interesting eater, but the strange thing is that it's not like I've like been making bacon for the last 10 years and just took it away. I mean, I've never cooked bacon around here. Like, I don't know where she got this appetite for it. It's really odd.
She's just seeing all the memes online.
I've been a vegetarian since she was born, so I mean, I don't know where she's gotten this taste for it. It's got to be her dad's house. Again, I'm going to blame him completely.
There you go.
Yeah, I think it sounds to me like something that she's sort of trying to express is more like sense memory and tradition, right? Like, it's not so much like, oh, I normally have this and now you're disrupting my routine and now I have to get something that I don't like as much. I think that's kind of not what I'm hearing. It's more like, I don't know.
Right.
It's more like, oh, I associate this with, sort of warm and fuzzy feelings being around family, which I think makes it easier maybe to sort of pivot into like, well, it's not about the food, it's about that experience. Or
Right. And we talk about animals a lot because she's such a nature lover. And, so it's like if she's going to be like sad that there's not going to be any ham at the Easter lunch, like, I have to like point out, well, come on, like, we love animals. Like, aren't you
Right.
so happy that no little pigs are going to have to get hurt for us today? And, I try to always like bring it back to like some level that she'll connect to.
I think
Yeah.
the age gap between your two kids is a lot further than mine, 7 and 5. They're actually 18 months apart, so it's about as close as you can get. And then Paisley's the 5-year-old girl who already is just completely in tune with everything that's going on in terms of her diet, in terms of being vegan, in terms of loving animals. She's talking the talk and walking the walk, and it's obvious for her. And then Cooper is 7, and he sounds a little bit more maybe like your 7-year-old, where he'll say, "I love eggs," and we're like, "But you don't eat eggs." Like he'll see an egg on TV, like an actual egg from a chicken, and say, "Oh, I love eggs." And I'm thinking, well, you've never eaten them. I'm making the most unbelievably gorgeous. You can't even imagine how perfect these just egg omelets are turning out now with cheese and spinach. And he'll eat 2 of those for breakfast without any issue. And I almost think in the back of his mind, he's thinking he's eating a chicken's egg. Like they're associating whatever they find around them or eating. Like we have these chicken nuggets at our grocer they're just amazing. They're like this hidden gem. And I'll cook a bunch up in the air fryer and they'll dip them in vegan mayo or ketchup or whatever. And I think in their young minds, they're just thinking, oh, I'm eating a chicken nugget. They're not stopping to think, hey, this is a pretty authentic, replica. This is a great substitution for what they never ate any of this stuff. They were, both they've been vegan since birth. So I don't know where they're getting it from, but it's definitely, outside influences.
Definitely.
yeah. I wonder, do either of your kids know a lot of other vegan kids? Like my kids really get excited when they can hang out with other vegan kids and sort of talk about how they're saving animals and stuff.
Yeah, my oldest daughter, and this might explain some things actually. Now that you pointed that out, I had an aha moment. She goes to like a Quaker school, and so we're very blessed that there are a lot of like-minded people in that community. So, when she has her friends over, because teenagers have to hang out in packs, right? Like you can't just be like 1 or 2. You have to have like 8 teenage girls together at the same time for it to count. So when I have all 8 here, I'll notice that, at least half, if not more, are vegan or vegetarian.
Wow. That's awesome.
So at that age, it's really bizarre,
Well, I think that was about the age that I was, because I was actually trying to be vegetarian longer than I was allowed to. Like my parents wouldn't let me until I want to say 13, but I think I was trying to when I was 11, and so I had to like go to the library because it's like before the internet, and take my little brother who was like just bouncing off the walls of the library and got us into trouble and stuff, and like just go totally like find old books and stuff and make my case basically to my parents to do it. Where I think now, obviously with the internet and with really social media, there's a lot more opportunity for kids to feel connected. But that is the age where people are starting to really understand, what's going on and start to question some of the things. And I know, obviously like a lot of people do it at that age and then it kind of goes away. But I think a big reason why people stick to it is because they have people around that they know who share those values and kind of almost remind them of what's going on.
That's definitely.
I'm gonna take a second here to stick in a cute kid quote.
It's time for another cute kid quote.
I like being vegan because we don't eat meat. I like vegan pizza because it doesn't have meat pepperoni made out of pig.
I like
vegan because you don't eat animals, and I like animals.
And there it is. So, yeah, this is all so fascinating to me because we have three different parents with 2 kids each in 3 distinctly different sort of geographic locations in the United States during a pandemic, all talking about what I think are successes of, raising vegan kids, and in Meredith's case, having vegan parents, which I think is unbelievably fantastic. So I think we all should just sort of step back and pat ourselves on the back. This is pretty impressive, considering how many other people I think around the country, and again during Veg Week, perhaps trying it for the first time during Animal Outlook's Veg Week, how many of us are not only surviving but we're thriving on vegan diets.
Yeah, it's like, come on in, the water's fine.
Exactly.
At that time, like, people are really coming to this issue in large numbers now, which I just think is so not what anybody could have really envisioned even 5 years ago, but certainly not like 10 years ago.
Yeah, a lot has changed. Just availability of options, options in grocers, restaurants, everywhere you look now. Vegans are catered to somewhat. I'm sure there's still areas, flyover states, that are a little bit more of a struggle for people. And there's still people, in fact, which I'm amazed by because I happen to live in a community with a lot of vegans. There are people who have never met another vegan in person, which I see them online. They're like, oh my gosh, I just want to meet one other vegan, please. I invite them over, but of course they live too far away to just stop by. This has been a fantastic episode. I don't know, Cheryl, do you have any other thoughts or questions for Meredith?
Well, I think just the last thing is, how is this different being South? I mean, Eric, you kind of mentioned the sort of different regional things, and we talked a little bit about, sort of virtual communities, social media and things like that. But, how does kind of keeping your Southern culture and being part of that world fit into veganism?
Well, I mean, I think what I touched on before, I mean, I just, I kind of hesitate to say this because I don't want to be like, I don't want to stereotype the South, but I do think that a lot of our Southern cooking is really built around meat. It is the fried chicken, and I live in a coastal town too. It's the fried shrimp. It's all of this like really hearty meat oriented cooking, and so I think that just challenging people to think outside the box with that and to move past that, like my parents, that's how it's really different. And just anecdotally, what I think is so fascinating is that at the beginning of the pandemic, and I can only speak for what happened down here, but a lot of our grocery stores got just mobbed. And so there was nothing on a lot of the shelves. All the meat was gone. There was this like chicken shortage here because all the moms would go in and they'd buy all the chicken meat. But there were all of these vegan products. All the vegan products were left. And it's like my family, my parents, my sister who's become a vegan, my business partner, we're all like, oh my gosh, it was like sort of like the most perfect timing to become a vegan before all of this started because we had such an availability of food. And it was just mind blowing because all the vegan stuff was on the shelves because there are hardly, there's enough vegans that are carrying it in the grocery stores, but, not enough to put a run on the vegan supply. Whereas all of the meat and all of the dairy products were gone from the shelves.
Yeah, it's funny. There was some research about that, and actually the demand has gone up for vegan products, but I think that's right. Like right in the beginning, you would see some of these sort of, visuals of empty shelves, which is the vegan products left. And I think it's this feeling that like, the vegan food isn't sort of comfort panic food necessarily. So that's where as I'm listening to you talk about fried shrimp and fried chicken, I'm like, yeah, we like to fry things like the vegan, hipster kind of world in LA loves to fry tons of stuff. Like that can still be vegan.
Right, you can still barbecue.
you can still, yeah, exactly. You can still start to be you and kind of get those sort of traditions or emotional needs or, just sort of whims or desire for adventure and new food or whatever. You can get all that met with, a vegan diet too.
Totally agree. Yeah. So Meredith, thank you. This has been wonderful having you on the podcast. Your insight and own experiences definitely have added to what we hope are, sort of valuable perspectives for other parents.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you for having me. And again, thank y'all for the work that you're doing. It's been so important to my life and my journey as a vegan. And then all of the people whose lives I've touched as a result of, really coming in contact with Animal Outlook. So thank you.
That's so great. Thank you.
Yeah, we definitely love hearing that. And so if you have any ideas for upcoming episodes, email us at veganfamily@triveg.com. This has been the Vegan Family Podcast. I'm Eric Lindstrom, joined by Cheryl Leahy from Animal Outlook. Thank you all. And as I end every phone call now and email, please wash your hands.
Thank you for tuning in to Animal Outlook's Vegan Family Podcast. Have episode ideas or questions about going vegan? Email us at govegan@triveg.com.